Good evening, my dear friends.
It's St. Patrick's Day, so I had to show off my green can.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Hey, it's a family show. No showing off your can.
I think Sherri, out of all of us, is definitely celebrating better than we are. So
it's true.
So we give Sherri full command of like, well, we don't even give you command. You give yourself permission, right? Right. I love it.
Right down to my green snake earrings, which I don't know if you can see on camera, but.
Oh, Leo says it makes me green with envy. Oh. Well, everyone, it's great to see you. It feels like it's been 18,000 years. But we all had a week off. We got some stuff done. We've been living life. Wow, I sounded really Midwestern when I said we're living life. But
did you look in the mirror and tell yourself that? Did you go to Myers?
Myers.
Oh, let me just sneak past you.
What?
Oh,
here.
Oh, sorry. But regardless, it's great to see everyone. We are really happy to be here. Tonight, we are continuing our conversation about toxic masculinity that we started in episode 67, which was a few episodes ago now. We are on episode 70. Isn't that?
Every time we get to a 10, like the end of it's like we're inching closer to 100. So
I know. I'm so excited. We're doing a lot of great progress, I think. So, so before we get started, let's talk about what we've been doing and how we've been doing, what we've been up to, all that jazz. Ready, go.
Sherri, you first.
Always Sherri first. What have I been doing? Let's see.
Never mind. I'm going first.
Okay, you go first.
I'm just kidding. I'm just gonna cut you off. I'm a vegan now.
What?
Yeah, I've been a vegan for 4 days now, and every day I make a smoothie, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's real bad. Like day one, I made a cranberry peanut butter smoothie, and it was really nutty. It kind of tasted weird. Somebody said it was like a peanut butter jelly, but I disagree.
That's interesting.
So yeah, I did that, and then my cat has been a jerk. I'm trying to film tarot videos, and my cat will jump. Today I was doing a full moon reading. He jumped off the windowsill onto the table and knocked over my coffee all over my tarot cards.
Oh no! Which deck?
My Modern Witch Tarot.
Oh.
So I had to peel apart the cards.
Oh no! Were they coated? Are they savable?
Yeah, they are. It's just he's been doing that lately where he'll lay on my cards or it's sort of he just wants my attention. But it's very interesting the way that he interrupts my readings. It's sort of he wants me to stop talking and just post the video. So I think it's interesting. I feel like my cat is giving me messages as far as no more.
I love that. Sherri, what have you been up to?
I have finally made a decision. So some of you who don't follow me on my YouTube channel, shame on you, don't know that I am going to be covering my couch. And so this has been an ongoing saga for quite a while. And I've been looking at fabric swatches and so this is going to be my next series. I forgot to mention this to you guys. So this is going to be my next series. It's me screwing up my couch as I try to recover it. So I just spent uku buku bucks. Hey, a little sticker shock today, but I spent uku buku bucks on fabric. So are you all ready for the YouTube exclusive? Only my Patreons have seen this. So this is going to be the main couch color. It's a little more, my lighting's a little warm right now. It's a little more turquoisey than this. And it's a chenille, so it's soft. So when people come over and crash on my couch, I'm looking at you, Panda Alsatian. And this is going to be my throw pillows.
That is so cute.
Isn't they cute? So this buffalo check has blue and black checks, and then these little woven in flowers that are kind of a cranberry red color. Yeah, so that's my big news, and I'm going to be chronicling this all on YouTube. So Sherri Makes Stuff,
Yes.
you got to watch me there. Help support my habit on Patreon. Shameless plug, because I just spent a lot of money on fabric.
Okay, I'm just gonna say this. It kind of reminds me of Mad Men, but that's kind of like your brand.
That
Oh,
is the brand.
oh no, here we go.
There we go. We did it. That's exactly right.
Oh.
New podcast theme tonight. Let's talk about how I love Mad Men.
Well, we will be talking about Mad Men of a sort, I guess.
Mm.
Toxic
Toxic
masculinity.
masculinity. I mean, Mad Men is the show for it.
It's true.
So, I've been doing well. I'm preparing to move with my partner. We're getting our first house together. It's rented, but I'm still excited that we're going to be living together. It's going to be nice. Beyond that, just working on school stuff. I've been, today was really nice outside. I worked outside today because our yard is a mess. I had to do something. Not that I got a lot done, but that's besides the point. So beyond that, let's see what we have tuning in. We have Panda Alsatian here with us tonight, who appreciates the orange and wishes us happy St. Patty's Day. Taylor is here. Leo is here. Congratulations on 2 brass stands for those crystal balls. Kenneth is here. Hello, Kenneth.
Hi, Ken.
Let's see. Rogue Agent is here. It's great to see you. Stay however long you're able to. And thank you, Panda. I really appreciate it. It was really nice. Thanks. All right. So, per the usual, let's do our show's mission statement, and then we will start with our topic for the evening. We live in a dynamic society where social media shapes us by creating greater opportunities for connection. It has led to a developing understanding of the adversity many marginalized communities face, the powers causing the adversity, and those who act as bystanders as atrocities take place in real time. Our goal with this show is to make connections and have challenging conversations about social topics, current events, pop culture, and art. Together, let's weave the threads of understanding with what privilege we have in order to learn, educate, and create in a world that's growing. Okay. Ari, you did not do praying hands tonight. What is happening?
I made a concerted effort because I can't do it every time.
Aw, no shots.
All right. So let's backtrack a little bit and review some things that we talked about for episode 67. So this is part 2 to that episode. In that episode, we talked about toxic masculinity at length. Largely, that episode was geared toward defining what toxic masculinity was, and we defined it as what comes of boys when they are taught that they can't express emotion openly, when they are taught that they have to be tough all the time, and that they need to internalize anything that might be feminine or whatever is considered weak. And femininity, according to toxic masculinity, is often considered a weakness. So we went over different terms like soy boy, alpha, beta. I learned a lot of different terms that I didn't even know before. We talked about certain phrases like boys don't cry, be a man up, all of those frustrating phrases. And we just wanted to kind of preface that a little bit before moving into tonight's conversation, which focuses more so on how toxic masculinity manifests itself in the gay community, because it manifests itself in quite a few different ways that might be relatively unexpected. I also forgot, by the way. I just looked at the notes.
I was going to say, like, we were going to talk about current events, weren't we?
I'm disorganized. Even though I have notes, it's ironic how I can disorganize myself. Sherri, do you want to talk about?
Well, we could always, I mean, that was such a nice intro. I don't want to derail that. Like, we could always hit that at the end.
Okay, we could do
kind of
that.
wrap up.
That
Yeah.
works.
Let's
I
wrap up then.
apologize for the disorganization, everyone.
That's okay.
Oh, no, it's fine.
So let's talk about how toxic masculinity has kind of taken shape in the gay community. So back in a galaxy far, far away, a long, long time ago, when I used to date a lot, and I mean a lot, Grindr used to be my best friend. I was on it all the time. So obviously, because of that, I would often be faced with a lot of different variations of how gay men utilize toxic masculinity, right? And a lot of it, from my experience, centered in what gay men found attractive. And a lot of gay men really fetishize men who are more masculine presenting. Of course, they're often labeled as straight acting. I take huge issue with the term straight acting because to me it just panders to that dynamic, that social acceptability of like, well, being straight and behaving straight is more acceptable. Obviously,
Right.
I've had my issues with that.
Well, and I was talking about this before when we were in the back room, that like saying that someone is straight acting talks about the fact that like men have this idea that being gay, you're like feminized in some way, or that if you act a certain way, that you're taking on a gender role of being a woman or like a woman. And that straight men are hyper masculine and real men. So it's a little transphobic, it's a little sexist, and it definitely doesn't allow, it kind of like pigeonholes gay people into like a certain role and like a certain, you know, way to live. And it's, to me, it's really fascinating. It's just like it's sort of like and tell me if I'm wrong about this, it's just like it doesn't allow for like depth and breadth of the gay community.
I agree. It's still kind of buying into the binary, right? And buying into traditional heteronormative roles, you know, gender roles and relationship roles. And it's not allowing for you know, something that you'd said, you know, in the back room also was, you know, how there's like the traditional female role and the traditional male role, and it's kind of trying to pigeonhole people into one of those, regardless of your gender expression, regardless of your sexual orientation. And it's like, but that's not how the world works. You know what I mean? Like that's not how even heterosexual relationships have to work, much less, you know, gay relationships. I remember that was actually one of the first things when I was very young. You know, I asked my brother, innocent child question, you know, like, you know, who's the guy, who's the girl in your relationship? And my brother was like, well, that's not how it works. You know, he's like, you know, we're just partners and we just, you know, take on whatever role, you know, we all take care of everything together. And that just like blew my mind, right? As a 9-year-old kid, I was just like, what is this magic of witchcraft of which you speak? You know? You mean I don't have to adhere to one single role, you know? And so it's very much just buying into that binary that the world is trying to pigeon us all into. So I agree, it's very transphobic and very trans exclusive.
Yeah, like, and it's just, I kind of feel like for gay men, certain spaces like Grindr are often our only spaces where we feel safe, right? And I think that safety kind of, or that mirage of safety, let's just say, kind of gives way to like other waves of toxicity that people don't often see. And I would say that toxic masculinity is one of those examples.
Can we like sidestep for a second and talk about my experience on Grindr?
Yeah, sure.
So I came out as non-binary, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm a little bit of everything. So I thought like I would try to meet, you know, bisexual people on Grindr because I thought it was for everyone. So I downloaded Grindr and
nope.
Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not.
Yeah.
I think someone yelled at me. And so what the hell are you doing on this app?
It's bad.
I don't know.
Now, I'm so sorry that happened. That's terrible. There's a lot of gatekeeping on there, and I think that
it's very like cis
Mhm.
homosexual, like it's very cis oriented, and it's like a specific kind of gay person. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
So it's like kind of a safe space for like a particular kind of that it's like very cis homosexual, and that's the only, and there is a sense too that there's kind of like a little bit, and am I wrong about this? I feel like there's a little bit of like racism, that it's like white cis homosexuals tend to go on Grindr because black and then trans people, it's sort of like they don't really seem to use that app from what I've seen. Am I wrong?
No, you were accurate. There is a lot of racism in the gay community. Like a lot of gay men are very like I was watching a TikTok video the other day of this person was a Hispanic TikToker, and they were talking about like their Grindr experiences, and like they would message guys, and like they're like without even any consideration, these guys would either ignore them or respond with like, sorry, not into your race, or like your skin tone's not my type.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my god, like what? And I think that because there's like a certain degree of like anonymity in that space, like that a lot of gay men think that it's acceptable to say things like that, and of course, like it's not just about saying things, like these people are literally thinking these things, so there's a conditioning there, right? So it like makes the issue even more insidious, right? Because like it's like, where does that conditioning come from? How far has it been, or how long has it been happening? I do want to look at what Panda Alsatian said really quickly.
Yeah.
Panda says 10 something years ago on Grindr is female to male, very binary and male presenting. I was not welcomed in that space. Any dating app I signed up for was like my own hate mail service, morning, noon, and night. That breaks my heart. I am so sorry.
And that's why, like, when I sign up for dating apps, I will look at both male and female because I'm bisexual. But I would only get messages from men because I looked more traditionally cis het female, and that like I didn't give off a gayness vibe, so I wouldn't get lesbians talking to me. And it's because like there was this idea that I had to act a certain way to be, accepted. So it's just like, so I just kind of fell into this trap that I've been in for a while now, where guys seem to be interested in me, and or males seem to be interested in me, and I fall into that trap of, well, this could be passing. I do like men, and then I just like further marginalize, like further push away from like being with a woman. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I like everybody. So I don't know what that is. It's that you've got to be one or the other. You know what I mean?
It's I think for gay men, the problem rests in two different areas. And not that this excuses toxic masculinity at all, but I'm also kind of thinking about like, well, what's the psychology behind this? Like why, like for Grindr, for example, why do gay men insist on owning this space and not allowing other people to inhabit it? And I had a gay man once tell me, like, it's because we've never had our own space. So like I feel the need to like, we need to have our space that nobody else can be in. Yeah. And I'm just like in my mind, I'm just like, but that's how we've been treated as a community our whole existence, and we're gonna do that to others. Like that doesn't seem
well. And to me, it goes like this: like in every way, you cis white homosexual men have a lot of privilege, It's just that they're marginalized in one way. So
Mhm.
it's sort of like when they're marginalized in that one way, it's sort of like they're kind of like on the, because I feel like there's kind of that sometimes when we don't think about things, there's kind of like a ranking in the gay community as to who gets the most rights, and
Mhm.
it's like femme lesbian women are treated with the male gaze, and then when you come down to gay men, it's like cis homosexual white men are like on that tier, and then it kind of, as it goes down, it's like trans people are kind of at the bottom. So it's just like, but I you know what I'm talking about, there's like this weird
Like
hierarchy in the
like
gay
a hierarchy defined strictly by
Well, and also
patriarchy.
I
Yeah.
think we can tie this back into this toxic masculinity because it's not just, you know, not just cis white gay men, but it's cis white gay men who can pass,
That's true. Yep. And that's
right?
what I'm
Yeah.
saying with
Because if
lesbians, it's like
you're
women
if,
who can pass as
Mhm.
being heterosexual women.
Because if you're effeminate at all, then suddenly you're just some silly Nelly queen and you're just,
Mhm.
completely discounted and you're completely, not taken seriously. And now you're othered as well.
I have a really sad story about that. Not to take things down to a depressing route, but um in college when I came out, like at that time, like it was particularly rampant in the gay community. Like at least now, I think there's a certain degree of like acknowledgement and conversation about it. A decade ago, that wasn't the case. Like there was just like free reign of toxic masculinity. I remember after coming out, like I would like do dating apps and stuff like that, and I would get so many rejections because at that time I looked very androgynous. Like I had very long hair, because that's how I felt confident that way. I felt like I looked good that way.
Mhm.
And a lot of gay men would be like, "You look like a girl, I want nothing to do with you." Or they would meet me and hear my voice and they'd be like, "Your voice is like terrible." Like
Too feminine.
yeah.
Mhm.
So it got so bad where like I would continually try to change myself. Like and a lot of it centered around my voice. Like I felt really ashamed of my voice.
I remember
So
you went through a period in your videos that I watched where you like tried to deepen your voice or like
mhm,
talk in a different way than
Mhm.
when I knew
yeah.
you in college, because in college you had just your normal voice or like what I considered your normal voice. But then I like watched your videos for a while and you just like would like kind of go down like an octave,
Yeah.
and you would
And
like
it's so hard to do. It took so much concentration to do that, but that is I also do that when I teach. I did not realize that
Really?
until it's kind of code switchy. Because subliminally I do that when I teach because when I don't sound deeper, my authority is not acknowledged at all, if
Okay,
that makes
hands up. Who
sense.
wants to hear Donnie's daddy teachy voice? Because I kind of want to hear Donnie
Oh
daddy
god,
teachy voice.
I couldn't do it. I don't know, maybe. Like, I have to be in the moment to do it because otherwise I'm on the spot and blushing. But
Teach me Donnie
um
daddy.
Donnie
And
Dad,
now
yeah,
and now I just like that
Sherri. Oh my, I
alliteration.
need. Oh
it's, to me it's kind of the same as trans women who will pitch their voice up to
yeah.
pass as women more, that like there's this like hyper feminization of trans women that they have to
Mhm.
dress a certain way, that's like they have to wear dresses, they have to have long hair, they have to always be coiffed in makeup when they head out the door, because if there's any doubt as to them being women, then they're just a man in a dress.
Well, and what makes this
Right.
so scary, and I know that this happens far more often in the trans community, but when there is that drive to fit that binary, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it can almost become self-destructive. Like for me, um, like I wanted to deepen my voice so much that I literally tried destroying my voice. I would like go outside and like scream into something to try to just make my voice sound haggard as
Mm.
possible. I would like there was a period of time where I tried smoking because I would read that like, oh, smoking will like
gives you a gravelly masculine voice.
Right.
And of course, like I tried smoking for a while, but it just was not for me. Like some people can smoke, I can definitely not.
Honey, they call it a whiskey voice for a reason. You just need some good whiskey.
Right.
Way more fun.
Right. Well, I've gotten to the point now where like I feel at ease with my voice. Like honestly, like also in the past like 10 years, if you watch my videos, my voice has kind of deepened naturally as well. Like I don't know, maybe if puberty hit me late, I don't know. But it's interesting to look back and see those changes, but also look back and just see how desperate I was to be someone I wasn't, right? There was a point where, like physically speaking, there was a point after I got so much criticism for my long hair, like I cut it all off. Like, Ari, you probably remember this in college,
I do,
like
yeah.
the great hair debacle. Yeah. And
there's something else I know. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. You're good.
Finish your thought, and then I'll say something.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it used to also try to like have facial hair to look more masculine as well. I don't do it for that purpose anymore. Now I genuinely feel attractive with facial hair, but
sorry,
anyway.
I got really excited. And
no, you're good.
I interrupted you. I keep doing that. I need to stop doing that. It's because I grew up in a family that had a lot of people who talked over each other, and it's just a bad habit that I need to break.
Hard habit to break.
I do that too sometimes. I get it.
So, my thought was that that's kind of the reason why there's sort of this like hypersexuality in the gay community, especially like among gay men, is that like that guys are non-committal, that like most of the time they just want to, especially like in the heterosexual community, there's this kind of movement towards hit it and quit it, like get on Tinder, meet up with somebody, and then you don't talk to them again because you're casually dating. And I feel like that masculinity of like, you know, proving themselves sexually kind of translates into the gay community too, that like they're non-committal, they don't want to be in a relationship because they're manly men and they can have whoever they want.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from stereotyping because, you know, if you're having sex in the gay community, if you're sexual, you know, you're having sex for pleasure. You're not having sex for procreation, which, as the right will very staunchly tell you, is what sex is for: procreation alone. And so I think a lot of that comes from cultural stereotyping, and that's also toxic masculinity, right? That's also coming from the Bible, which was written by a bunch of Bronze Age men who were trying to keep their financial house in order and keep their possessions under control, including their household, you know? I was going to say also, you know, if we think about what is, you know, where is that hypersexuality coming from? What are we talking about when we're talking about traditional masculine looks? We're talking about secondary sexual characteristics, right? So it's this heightened secondary sexual characteristics like super muscular, facial hair, deep voice, right? Lots of hair on, sometimes lots of body hair, right? Like that is kind of what is, you know, worshipped almost. You know, my brother used to call the gym the gay church, you know? It's almost, you know, to that level of being worshipped, you know, and it's that, so it becomes this like, I mean, some of this, you know, emphasis on body beautiful, of course, we can take all the way back to the ancient Greeks. Don't make me do that again, right? But we can take it all the way back to the ancient Greeks and their love and reverence for, you know, the really hyper masculine models of men. And so you see in the art historical record, starting in the classical time from 480 BCE, you see all of these nude men, and they're clearly being, modeled after athletes. And so it's these very athletic figures doing athletic things. They're in the guise of gods and, you know, and athletes and that sort of thing. But the artists are looking at athletes. They're bringing athletes into their studio and they're drawing and sculpting them based off of live models. And so the men are nude and in all these kinds of really athletic poses. And so you can see all the musculature and the potential energy of the human body on display. But women are covered up. women they thought were deformed in some kind of way, and they were, ugly and unclean. And so women's bodies were always covered. And this begins this cycle of toxic masculinity and how women's bodies in Western culture and how women's bodies are looked at and othered. Eventually because there's a ban on showing the women's bodies in art, that eventually gets broken with the Aphrodite of Knidos in 300 something, 2 glasses of wine in. And she breaks the ban on showing the female figure in nude, but that female figure is still doing something. She's reaching for her clothing and she's covering herself up modestly.
Kind of like a shame involved.
So there's shame involved, and the woman still needs an excuse on why she's nude, right? She's bathing, that's why she's nude. Where dudes are just nude, just letting it all hang out. So this kind of culture of men, handsome, really, muscular, really masculine men, we can date that all the way back to the ancient Greece, that reverence of. And that comes out of, and the reason that they worshiped the men so much was because it was a very patriarchal society. They locked their women away. Women were not allowed to associate with anything other than other women and children. So they were not allowed to associate with any other men. They were not allowed to associate freely out in the world. And men would, as soon as you were old enough to grow a full beard, you would be married off to a young man who was not old enough to grow a beard. So what's that age, right? Preteen to teenager. And that young man would be his apprentice. You would take him around and introduce him to your friends. You would teach him about law. You'd teach him about society and all of this philosophy and everything that was happening at the time. And he would be your lover. You would have sex with him for pleasure. Your wife you had sex with for procreation. And so it was like this really insular, good old boys club that fostered and gave birth to more good old boys club. Because as soon as that young boy grew up and was old enough to grow a beard, he was married off to a woman, but would take on an apprentice as well. And it just self-perpetuated like that. So a lot of our mores in Western culture can be brought back to, I think we can really place this back with the ancient Greeks, because when the Americas started up, where did they look back to for their culture, right? Where did they look back to for their cultural clues?
The architecture,
look at the whole neoclassical period that came up during the American and French revolutions.
I'm just going to say it. I've heard this speech before, but I could listen to you teach all day long, Sherri.
Yeah, Sherri, like the artistic perspective, like and the historical perspective is just, I'm nerding.
Aww.
I'm nerding and I love it.
And you have to hear my teacher voice, so your turn.
I'm too shy.
So, on the flip side of the coin, there's a lot of like lesbian porn that's for the heterosexual male gaze, that when women are sexual or when women are kissing, it's for the benefit of heterosexual men.
Right. Yeah.
And notice how heterosexual men are far more comfortable with lesbians than they are with gay men, right?
And they hit on lesbians because they think that lesbians are just heterosexual women that have denied themselves and are just playing at being gay. So they're like, I'm going to be the guy that turns you.
Yep. Yep. I've actually seen women do that with gay men too, unfortunately, from personal experience. Anyway, sorry, Sherri.
There's a line that says that like you aren't really that thing. You're just pretending. You're playing house with being gay. You're experimenting with being gay, and that it's a temporary thing, and that you don't really feel that way.
Right. And so then if you're, pansexual or bisexual, right, then, you're really just pretending. You're just a gay person in disguise, or a lesbian in disguise, or you're just a straight person just waiting for the right person to, all you need is the right penis to straighten you out, right?
And that's why I'd be in relationships and I'd be passing because I'd be with, I was traditionally femme, like just until recently I didn't have short hair. I looked very feminine, and I, wore all feminine clothing. I held myself in a feminine way, and it was because, most of my relationships have been passing, and I wanted to kind of not set myself up for questions. Because let me tell you, the first week I got my hair cut, I told Sherri about this, but I went walking because my car wasn't working. So I went down to the bank and I got some money out. And then I was going to walk over to the grocery store. And this van pulls up. And I was like, oh, man. I'm like, I'm going to get robbed. I have several $100s in my pocket. The window rolls down and it's this like very religious, like I wear a dress all the time and it's homemade. Woman leans out and says, can I give you a pamphlet? And I look at her and I'm like, she's a Jehovah's Witness and she's trying to convert me because I look too masculine, and that that there's this idea that I have to, as a person with a vagina, that I have to look hyper feminized, and that if I stray from that norm, obviously I have to be converted back, and that like I don't really feel this way. I'm just kind of experimenting, and that I'm not a spiritual person, or that I'm somehow lost or sinful because I'm not the way that they expect me to be.
Right. It's the whole Torch Song trilogy thing, right? It's a phase. Like, it's a very long phase. It's been 30 years,
So I want to go back to your comment, Ari, that you made about like the heterosexual passing relationships. And I want to talk about like how people outside of the LGBTQ plus community try to like place people in the LGBTQ plus community in those dynamics, right? Like they like will look at a relationship and be like, well, who's the man and who's the woman, right?
Yeah.
I get that so much. Like even like people that I know that they know that that's not a question that I would be finding
and there's
acceptable.
also it's with the gender binary too. You get that a lot too. That like if you look androgynous, it's like, so what do you have in, like if you have a flat chest, if you have long hair or short hair, or if you have like an in-between, like they made a joke on Saturday Night Live. I'm just remembering this. It's Pat. Remember Pat?
Yeah.
And it was like, they were kind of like, is it a girl? Is it a boy? Like, what do I call them? And it's sort of like, that's like my first memory of somebody who was non-binary is Pat, because the big joke was, who are they really? What's in their pants? I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Well, like I've even had like friends that I've gotten into fights with over that. Like friends where they would simply be like, well, somebody in your relationship has to be the man or the woman. And then they like, I would like try to ask them like, well, why are you, where's that thought process coming from? And then they would like move to like, well, who's dominant and who's submissive, right? And I was just like, that's something a little different, but okay, like we'll, and I like, I would say like, we both are two men. We both are dominant and submissive whenever we feel that it's comfortable. Like, and for like, and like, I could see that person was like 404 error, like blue screening in their head when I said that. I'm just like, we don't have to ascribe to like one or the other. Like we can be two men in a relationship who waver through this fluidic spectrum of dominance and submissiveness. But then again, dominance and submissiveness is largely attributed to masculinity and femininity.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's get to the comments really quick, because I see a couple really
good.
Actually, I see several that are good. So we have Leo saying, as someone who grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, never was baptized, thankfully, I always never liked the way witnesses have judged this demeanor, yet they claim they aren't.
Yep.
And then we have Panda Alsatian saying, I feel like when they ask who's the woman, they're really asking who's the bottom because they're nosy.
Right. Because there's also this association that being a bottom is also submissive too, when it can be,
you have like the dominant person, the masculine, and then you have the submissive feminine.
It's like they can be either or, but people immediately gravitate to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have like two lesbians, and they're both like cis or heterosexual men see them both as submissive, because if they are femme pass or like het passing, then it's sort of like that pretending like they have to insert themselves in that relationship and like try to get with both of them or one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we have April that says, I too have experienced that due to my short hair. I declined the pamphlet and found it grossly intrusive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry you had to deal with that. That's not fair at all. And I know that especially when you're out in public, there's always like when you have short hair as a femme, it's sort of like that you're traversing something that's considered taboo a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but like when you start to go into that androgynous territory, it gets kind of dangerous because you're going outside the norm in some way, and it's something that can be easily spotted. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So, Lagiakris, it's good to have you with us tonight, but I want to pose a question in response to your comment, because you say, in my opinion, there are no true men left on this planet anymore because of how bastardized the word man is. No offense. So I guess my question would be, what do you mean by true men? Because we're not saying here that masculinity is bad by any stretch of the imagination. Right. There is healthy masculinity, okay? We're talking about masculinity which is being used to erase, silence, or invalidate the existence of specific groups of people. Mm-hmm. That being LGBTQ plus people and women. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if
I'm a little offended by this comment, I'm just going to put that out there, that it's sort of like there's an idea that if you're a trans man or that if you are of a certain type of person, that you're considering it like a watering down of masculinity or some kind, or that if you have like homosexual men that like they're watering down, that you have the soy boys and stuff like that, that it's like there's a watering down of what a true man is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little offended by this comment.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be interested to hear what they have to say, because I don't know. That's not how I took it. I took it as them saying, and please, correct us and let us know what you're trying to say, because the wording is a little problematic of what you're using there. But, because true men, like, what's that mean? But I think they're talking about the word masculinity has taken on so much bad connotation because there is so much toxic masculinity out there, that it's like, where is that line? And maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but it's like, what is, and if you're asking like, what is positive masculinity? Like, we can give you lots of examples of positive masculinity,
mm-hmm.
If that's what you're looking for. Like, I mean, you think, I'm going to give you the big kind of obvious answers, like the Fred Rogers, the Bob Rosses, the,
Keanu Reeves.
My partner, you know what I mean? He's very positive, masculine figure. He's cis white. We mess with him all the time, don't we, Ari? He's cis het white. It's not his fault, He was born that way. We tried to give him too hard of a time of it, but
mm-hmm.
He's a very positive, masculine figure. And anytime he's ever said something that was problematic or fell into the boys will be boys or whatever, he listens. And that's really all it takes, is just.
Well, and Reggie's of a certain generation too, so right. It's like, there's this idea that maybe he does certain things because that's just the way he was taught and grew up, right. And experienced for so long, that there was this like power dynamic in which the world catered to people
right.
like him.
Right. Well, yeah. So I didn't want to completely out him, but yeah, he's also a boomer and he's Christian. So he's like all the bad things, and yet still, a positive masculine force. You know what I mean? And I really have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah. So Lagiakris, like, it's like, we don't want to put you on the spot. Like, if you don't feel comfortable explaining that, you don't have to, but we would appreciate clarification on that, because again, the whole purpose of this conversation is to educate in some way. Like
Correct.
we are
And
just
share.
we're
Right.
sharing our perspectives and our experiences with how, and as Leo mentions it, how masculinity has been weaponized against communities that we fall within. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's so easy to lose context in a chat.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So absolutely, we're not at all trying to pick on you or anything like that.
I always lose I always end up losing context.
Same.
All the time.
Hard same.
So another thing that, like, I realized that we probably should move forward in the notes here too. Another thing that we often see toxic masculinity take the form in the gay community is there is a lot of demeaning toward women, right? Like a lot of gay men will like joke about like women's like bodies and like say like ew, which is completely unacceptable. Like you don't need to make women feel less than because they are not.
It's objectifying them because when it's a gay man, they're not physically attracted to a woman, so they must be like they're not a real person. You know what I mean? Like there's that objectification because they can't be with them, so it's like they're like they like being friends with them until it's time to go to the gay bar and then get out of the way, bitch.
Right, yeah. It is objectification. I want to quickly touch back on Lagiacris's comment. Thank you, by the way, Lagiacris. I appreciate you responding. And you say, I guess I mean the amount of people using masculinity toxically, like the way you guys say, and how many there are. I kind of let my anger towards people like the ones mentioned here. So you're talking about like those who act on their toxic masculinity and weaponize it. Okay, so see, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
You were going to say something, Sherri.
Well, actually, I just wanted to call attention to that comment because I thought that was a good comment. Yeah.
Yeah, so you clarified that perfectly. So thank you
so much. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah.
Because this is, if we're not communicating clearly with each other, then what are we doing here, right?
Right,
So
and mind you, if there's anything that you want to challenge that we say, like that's totally acceptable. Like we all come from different perspectives and experiences. I think we fall on the same page for a lot of things, but there might be privileges that individually we have that might prevent us from understanding something, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's all about how we react to being challenged as well. So, Lagiacris, I think you handled us challenging your comment very well. Like, I think you were very receptive to what we had to say. So we do appreciate that.
And I'm sorry I got upset. It's just that
you're okay.
this is a safe space, and when I feel like that safe space is challenged, I get kind of defensive about it. So
and you should absolutely say something. And also, Ari, I feel like we saw Donnie's teacher voice there.
Oh,
I think that was a little bit. I think we saw Donnie Daddy teacher voice. So
well, and Ari, I think that like it's also interesting to look at like when we are offended, how we respond to it and how we handle it as well. And I think that your example of challenging it, but also being very vulnerable and allowing yourself to be transparent about that was a significant moment. Like that was powerful to me too.
I agreed.
I mean, I'm not going to be mean about it, but my phone lit up and was like taking commands from you, Donnie.
That's funny.
Oh, am I seducing Siri or Alexa?
Bixley, I think
Bixley, yeah. So, Donnie Daddy taking over.
That's gonna be my nickname from now on.
So what you were saying though, Donnie, like before our clarification there. So I grew up, of course, with a gay older brother, and he was very much of that school of, and I get where it was coming from now as an adult, but as a kid, like you don't know where that's coming from, you know what I mean? And so you don't understand. And that was like my big brother, and we were pretty close. And so I thought that there was something wrong with my body and that there was something flawed with me because I had a vagina. You know what I mean? Well, I still have it. I didn't give it away on eBay or anything. So I tried. It's illegal apparently.
Facebook Marketplace. I'm kidding.
The Mexican black market. I was going to make a racist comment about the black market.
Oh no.
Oh.
I can't wake up in a tub in a hotel room with, it packed in ice. So
I'll refrain from saying
like a Barbie doll
things because this is a safe space and I need to work on
adhere to it. Yeah. So anyway, no, it's it was a very it took me a long time to realize that was his hang up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And to even realize that it was problematic, and to even realize that where that was coming from, and that was oh, that's very toxic. I think I was in my 30s before that really hit me, and that was part of the struggles that I was having as an individual and with my own body image.
Yeah. It's so frightening in a way to see how acceptable a lot of gay men think that sexism is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about this in the back room before we started here too. When I first came out, I noticed that other gay men would be very scathing toward women and be very they kind of painted it as comedic and funny and campy, to be demeaning toward women. And eventually I would start acting on these sexist behaviors as well, until one day I had a very patient
Come in your room or something, if you would, please.
Friend who was a woman who corrected me and who was just Donny, that's not acceptable. Why are you saying that? Right. And of course, at first, because at that point in time, I didn't take criticism very well. I was oh my God, I'm a horrible person, blah, blah, crumble, But then I started thinking about it more and being okay, I'm watching these other people demean women, right? Why should I act on that? I was acting on it to fit in with them, right? So once I was able to compartmentalize that, that's when I was able to at least work toward unlearning it. It was really challenging because it's almost like breathing at a certain point, right? Yeah. And I think that goes for any form of hate, really. When you really get yourself conditioned by it, it's difficult to get through.
Yeah.
So let's see. Lagiacris. I mean, I guess it was because my anger from certain individuals from my past who were like that. I should probably go. Oh, and if you feel the need to leave, if that's what you're comfortable with, that's okay. But mind you, we're not upset.
I hope you don't feel uncomfortable. This is a safe space. You're allowed to say what you want. So I don't want you to feel like you don't belong here, because you do.
Right. If anything, Lagiacris, I really appreciate the comment and modeling that conversation for us, where we could have a conversation and come to a mutual understanding. I think that's so important. And I hope that if anything, that's what you take away from the conversation. The fact that we were all able to eventually communicate and land on the same page. Yeah.
So
yeah, you didn't cause an accidental problem.
Yeah, no, you didn't.
No, and actually I encourage that kind of discussion, because then that allows us to kind of pick apart and think about what is it that we're saying and how are we saying it. So, please don't feel like you have to ostracize yourself or that we're trying to ostracize you. We need to have these kinds of conversations, and we need to question what we're thinking and how we're saying things, and what is it we mean? That's healthy discourse. That's healthy. I almost said intercourse.
Well,
please have healthy intercourse with us. Wait.
Discourse, intercourse.
Discourse. There we go.
So, so let's because we only have a few minutes left, and I also want to take time toward the end for us to talk about current events. So let's talk about ways that we can at least repair toxic masculinity when we see it. So do you guys have any ideas about what we can do? How can we improve that?
Well, I think open conversations. I'm sorry. I'm open conversations like we just had, and just being hey, can you please clarify what you meant? Not just assume what somebody means, but really listen to what they're saying. And if there's a correction that needs to be made, then help them with that correction or offer a different perspective. But just try to foster open and honest conversations. don't get reactionary, or try not to get super reactionary, but try to listen to what that person's saying and then offer a different perspective. And then if they're not open to it, then question that friendship, like, then why am I attached to this person still? But if it's somebody you're friends with and somebody you're close to for whatever reason, and they're in your circle, then, trust that and try to build off of that relationship and try to educate as much as you can. What were you gonna say, Ari?
Oh, so the big thing that I think of is that, like, we need to break down this perceived hierarchy in the gay community, that, like, we really need to undo a lot of these ideas that if you're of a certain type of person, of a certain orientation or gender, that you're above another person in the community, and to really, like, do a lot of, like, self evaluation on, like, your privilege that you do have, and that how that affects how it affects the intersectionality of the community. You know what I mean? Because like, as a non-binary person, I do have a little bit of marginalization, but I also am white. So what that means is that, like, I have more privilege than this person, or than Black people in the community, especially Black trans women, especially. So it's like, it's not that I have to, like, show, like, deference to them, but just, like, make sure that, like, we are bringing them up to the same level, and that we're all putting ourselves on, like, an equal playing field.
Hear their voices and elevate them, right?
Yep. Exactly, 100%. And I think that another thing that might be helpful as well in undoing toxic masculinity, because a lot of people, like, I mean, there are many people who often are uncomfortable with talking about it, right? Because I do think that we live in a time where a lot of people have, like, a latent fear about cancel culture as well, and they immediately develop this shame if they exhibit any form of toxic behavior, right? And, like, I just want to say that, like, it's possible to learn from behaviors without succumbing to shame, right? And this was something or bullying, right? Like, this is something that, like, I mentioned earlier, like, I had to overcome a lot of my sexist behaviors when I was a gay, right? Like, I had to acknowledge, like, where that behavior was going wrong and then work toward fixing it. And it's a journey that we're all on. Like, we all are subject to the conditioning that we've experienced our whole lives, right? And unfortunately, well, because we are all adults, we have the responsibility of acknowledging that conditioning and doing what we can to try to repair it, or try to develop our understanding of these different dynamics.
So we have a question, and it's, do you think the younger generations of the gay community are better educated about the pitfalls of toxic masculinity?
That's an interesting question.
I think it is, but it isn't.
Yeah, like, I think that there is a better awareness, but there's a difference between awareness and education. Like, I think when a group of people is educated on a specific topic, they are aware of it, they are aware of how it functions and what they can do to navigate through it or to subvert it in some way, right? Whereas a general awareness just means that people are acknowledging that it is an issue, but aren't actively engaging in fixing it. So I think that the younger gay community, like, I think the education could be better.
I think they work at it, but, like, you know, it's sort of like a dirt road that you have, like, these tracks in which you go down, and they're well worn and well traveled. And so, like, especially when you get young gay or trans people, or one of the LGBT members of the community, they look towards their elders for how they should act and think. So there is a little bit of, like, rubbing off of the old generations on the young generation to a certain extent. But I think that, like, there is mostly idea that, like, there's an awareness that this is also, like, outdated thinking. So it's a little bit of both, in my opinion.
Yeah. Sherri, what are your thoughts on that question?
I think we're getting there. I don't think we're there. I think it's going to take a couple more generations for us to get there, honestly. It's just really, still embedded in our culture, and we have too many older generations still teaching the younger generations that have not gotten the memo yet.
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch on what Leo said. Leo said, if you get harassed by witnesses, tell them that you are disfellowshipped. Actually, all you have to tell them is that you're an apostate. You don't even have to, because if you're disfellowshipped, they might try to pull you back into the fold. But if you tell them you're an apostate, that immediately puts a red mark on you and they'll leave you alone.
And Panda mentions, from my experience, no, but they might be within 5 to 10 years on the cusp, I'd say. And they might be open to the conversation. Yeah, I feel that too.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And then we could have a whole conversation about how the LGBTQ plus community treats the trans and non-binary communities as well, because there's still a lot of work to do.
Yes,
Let's
there
just say
is.
that's a whole entirely different situation than working through toxic masculinity. So, although sometimes it does overlap, but anyway, okay. So, so Sherri, do we want to take a moment and talk about current events first before we part ways for the evening?
Yeah, so of course, as we're all aware, right, we're still witnessing, Russia attacked Ukraine. We just wanted to make sure that, we weren't like brushing past that and ignoring it. We have been talking about having a chat that's, I put it as, the very special uber Marxist kind of chat where we talk about some of the cracks that are showing up in the system based on the pressures that we've seen. So we've seen a couple of different pressures. We've seen the pandemic put pressures on our system, and now we're seeing this war over in Eastern Europe put pressures on our system and what that does to our economy. And that tells us that, we're not really in control. So, if you're angry about gas prices, seize the means of production. So that was really kind of my takeaway, was like, yeah, gas prices are going up. No, the president doesn't have much to do with it. Yeah, so it's just I don't know. And our hearts are out to the people of Ukraine. And man, what warriors, right? Like what strong people we're really seeing. So
yeah.
We're just going to be anti-lobbyist, anti-capitalistic, price gouging, the fun stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So, in a nutshell.
But yeah, I think we had a troll in the comments. That's what happened.
Yeah, we did.
Well, hey, at least we know that we're getting out there enough where we're getting trolls.
That's true.
Ow, I cracked my neck doing that. Never be so gay that you crack your neck. It happens.
There's
a troll in
the castle. Oh my goodness, my friends. I always enjoy our conversations, and I think that this was a really good conversation tonight. They're always good conversations, though, So, well, my friends, we're going to bid adieu for the evening, but of course, stay tuned for next Thursday. Same time, same place. We'll see you then. Okay. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.